These people shocked the world with crimes so disturbing that many compared them to real-life zombies because of their horrifying actions. From bizarre obsessions to chilling criminal cases, here are 10 terrifying people whose stories are almost impossible to believe. Tarrare. One of the strangest people in history was a Frenchman known as Tarrare. Born in the late 1700s, he became famous for one unbelievable reason. He was always hungry. According to historical records, Tarrare could eat enormous amounts of food without ever feeling full. His appetite was so extreme that his own family reportedly could no longer afford to feed him. As he grew older, his behavior became even stranger. He performed in traveling shows where crowds watched him swallow objects that no ordinary person would even think about eating. During the French Revolutionary Wars, he joined the army, but his endless hunger became impossible to manage. Doctors became fascinated by his condition and admitted him to a hospital to study him. Instead of improving, his behavior reportedly became even more disturbing. Historical accounts claim that Tarrare searched through garbage, consumed dead animals, and was even accused of eating human remains from a hospital morgue. While some details have been debated by historians, his story remains one of the most bizarre medical mysteries ever recorded.
8.
Peter Bryan. Peter Bryan became one of Britain's most disturbing criminal cases. Born in London, he struggled with severe mental illness for years, but his crimes shocked even experienced investigators. In the 1990s, Bryan was convicted of a violent murder and was sent to a secure psychiatric hospital instead of a traditional prison. Doctors later believed his condition had improved, and after years of treatment, he was released under supervision. Sadly, that decision had tragic consequences. Not long after leaving the hospital, Bryan killed his close friend, Bryan Cherry. When police entered the apartment, they discovered an incredibly disturbing scene that quickly made headlines across the country. Investigators found evidence that Bryan had attempted to cook part of the victim's body. During later interviews, Bryan admitted to eating part of the victim and claimed he believed it would allow him to absorb the person's spirit. His statements horrified both investigators and mental health experts. Following the case, Peter Bryan was declared dangerous and returned to a high-security psychiatric hospital, where he remains today. His story also led to major criticism of the mental health system and raised difficult questions about when patients with severe illnesses should be released. His crimes remain among the most shocking criminal cases in modern British history.
7. Vince Weiguang Lee.
One of the most shocking crimes ever committed on public transportation happened in Canada in 2008. Vince Weiguang Lee appeared to be an ordinary passenger when he boarded a Greyhound bus traveling across Manitoba. Nothing about him seemed unusual until the trip suddenly turned into a nightmare. Without warning, Lee attacked another passenger, Tim McLean, who had been sitting nearby. The horrifying incident unfolded in front of dozens of terrified witnesses. The bus quickly stopped, and passengers rushed outside while the driver locked the doors, trying to prevent Lee from leaving. When police arrived, they surrounded the bus and negotiated with Lee for several hours before finally taking him into custody. The disturbing nature of the crime shocked people across Canada and quickly became international news. During the investigation, doctors concluded that Lee had been experiencing a severe psychotic episode caused by untreated schizophrenia. Because of his mental condition at the time of the attack, the court later found him not criminally responsible on account of mental illness. Instead of serving a traditional prison sentence, Lee was placed in a secure psychiatric hospital where he received long-term treatment. His case sparked nationwide discussions about mental health care, public safety, and the difficult balance between medical treatment and criminal justice.
José Luis Calva
was a Mexican writer and amateur poet whose private life hid a terrifying secret. Friends described him as quiet and intelligent, but behind closed doors, investigators would later uncover one of the most disturbing crime scenes in Mexico City's history. In 2007, police were searching for Calva's missing girlfriend after her family reported that she had suddenly disappeared. Their investigation eventually led them to his apartment. What officers found inside shocked even experienced detectives. Evidence at the scene showed that the victim had been killed, and investigators also discovered signs that parts of her body had been prepared as food. The gruesome discovery quickly made headlines around the world and earned Calva the nickname the Cannibal Poet. As police searched the apartment, they also found notebooks containing dark stories and violent writings. Investigators began examining whether Calva had been connected to other unsolved disappearances, although many of those suspicions were never fully proven. Before his trial could be completed, Calva was found dead inside his prison cell in 2007. Officials ruled his death a suicide, bringing an end to one of Mexico's most disturbing criminal investigations. Charles Domery. Long before modern medicine could explain unusual medical conditions, there lived a man whose hunger seemed almost impossible to satisfy. His name was Charles Domery, a Polish soldier born in the late 1700s, and his appetite became the subject of countless stories across Europe. According to historical records, Domery could eat several times more food than an average person and still complain that he was starving. During his military service, fellow soldiers watched him consume food that most people wouldn't even consider edible. Reports claimed he ate large numbers of cats, rats, and other animals simply because normal meals never seemed enough. His strange behavior became even more alarming while he was being held as a prisoner of war in England. Guards reportedly noticed that he constantly searched for anything he could eat, no matter how unusual it was. Doctors who examined him were fascinated because, despite his enormous appetite, he remained surprisingly thin and showed no obvious signs of illness. One incident described by historians claimed Domery even attempted to eat part of a dead soldier before others stopped him. While some of these stories have been debated over the years, his extreme hunger was well documented by physicians of the time. Yoo Young-chul. In the early 2000s, South Korea was shaken by one of the country's most notorious serial killers, Yoo Young-chul. Growing up in poverty, Yoo reportedly blamed society for many of his problems. Over time, his anger turned into violent hatred. Between 2003 and 2004, he carried out a series of murders that targeted wealthy elderly people as well as women. What made the case even more horrifying were Yoo's later confessions. During police questioning, he admitted that he had consumed parts of some victims after the killings. Investigators were stunned by his statements, and the case quickly became one of the most disturbing criminal investigations in South Korean history. Authorities eventually connected Yoo to more than 20 murders. His crimes spread fear across the country as police worked tirelessly to stop him before more innocent people were harmed. After his arrest, Yoo confessed in detail and showed little remorse for his actions. He claimed that society had failed him and attempted to justify his horrific crimes, but the public remained horrified by the sheer brutality of what he had done. He was later sentenced to death, although South Korea has maintained a long-standing moratorium on executions, meaning he remains imprisoned. 3. Jarno Elg. In 1998, Finland witnessed one of its most disturbing criminal cases when a young man named Jarno Elg became involved in a crime that investigators struggled to comprehend. Elg had reportedly shown violent behavior toward animals long before the attack, something investigators later viewed as an early warning sign. According to court records, he and several acquaintances were involved in a satanic group that claimed to practice bizarre rituals. One night, the group entered the apartment of a 23-year-old man. The victim was brutally murdered, and investigators later discovered evidence that parts of the victim's body had been consumed during what participants claimed was a ritual. The case horrified the Finnish public. During the trial, Elg admitted his involvement, while prosecutors described the crime as one of the most shocking acts of violence the country had ever seen. He was sentenced to life imprisonment, while several accomplices received shorter prison terms. 2. Ottis Toole. Few criminals have generated as much controversy as Ottis Toole. Known primarily as an associate of serial killer Henry Lee Lucas, Toole confessed to dozens of murders over the years, although investigators later determined that many of his claims were exaggerated or false. However, some of his confessions contained details that deeply disturbed detectives. During interviews, Toole admitted to acts of cannibalism involving some of his victims. He described these crimes with little emotion, leaving investigators shocked by the graphic nature of his statements. Toole's troubled childhood, years of abuse, and long history of violent crime painted the picture of a deeply disturbed individual. Throughout his life, he drifted across the United States, repeatedly coming into contact with law enforcement. While historians and investigators continue debating how many crimes he actually committed, there is little doubt that he was responsible for several brutal murders. His bizarre confessions only added to his terrifying reputation. Ottis Toole died in prison in 1996, but his name remains closely connected to one of America's darkest periods of serial crime. 1. Alexander Spesivtsev. Topping our list is one of Russia's most infamous criminals, Alexander Spesivtsev. Born in 1970, Spesivtsev endured an abusive childhood that investigators later believed contributed to his severe psychological problems. As he grew older, his behavior became increasingly violent, eventually leading to psychiatric treatment. After being released from a mental institution, Spesivtsev began committing a series of horrifying crimes from his apartment in Novokuznetsk during the 1990s. Investigators believe he was responsible for numerous murders, although the exact number has never been confirmed. Some estimates suggest the true victim count could be far higher than those officially identified. When police finally searched his apartment, they uncovered one of the most disturbing crime scenes in Russian history. Investigators also discovered evidence that parts of some victims had been consumed. Even more shocking were reports that his own mother had helped lure victims to the apartment and assisted in covering up the crimes. During his trial, Spesivtsev was declared legally insane and committed to a secure psychiatric hospital rather than a traditional prison. His mother was also convicted for her role in helping him.